Hey everyone, Jack Many Trades back here again with another video, and today I'm going to be talking to you guys about a pretty handy skill that's going to save you a lot of money. So before we get started, I just want to make a quick disclaimer here, which is that I am showing you the techniques that you will need to use in order to be able to repair your garments. However, I am not a professional seamster, so definitely make sure that you feel comfortable doing the job that you are planning to do. Don't blame me if there's something that goes horribly wrong. I don't think that there should if you follow the instructions in this video, but just as a disclaimer, I'm not responsible if you end up messing up your favorite piece. But with that being said, let's get straight into this. But with that being said, I have used this technique on a number of pieces of clothing in my wardrobe, from standard shirts that you would find at like Walmart or something like that, to jeans, all the way up to some of your most expensive Burberry pieces where they needed some button repair and other things like that. So these techniques will serve you well. They do take a little bit of time to build up, and you are definitely best off if you start off just playing around with these techniques on some scrap clothing or some scrap fabric that you don't really care about. It's good to get a handle of this motion and all of the techniques before you actually go ahead and apply it to something real. But if you do learn this skill, it will save you a lot of money and a lot of time going to a professional to get these simple things done for you. With that being said, let's get straight into this. Remember to drop a like, leave a comment down below, and subscribe. Let's get into this. All right, so here we are with our sewing kit. So this is one option that you can go for. I will leave a link in the description below for an Amazon link. If you do want to help support the channel a little bit, you can go ahead and buy through that link, and it will be helping out the channel at no additional cost to you. But with that being said, make sure that you have a sewing kit or something that has a couple of needles as well as different colored threads and some scissors and stuff like that. So in here, my sewing kit is a little bit disordered because I just haven't gotten around to organizing it since I've been a little bit busy. But a good sewing kit will have a couple of clips for you, a thimble if you like that, thread helper, a couple of pins, some extra buttons, a little measuring tool, a little measuring tape, as well as, like I said, a bunch of needles. So what you're going to want to do is start off by taking out your needles, your scissors, and whatever color thread you are going to go with. So for this shirt, we are working with something that's gray. We'll just take out the gray color. If you are going to be working on something a little bit more dear, you may want to go with something, you may want to go and find a thread that more perfectly matches your piece of clothing, but definitely just make sure that you take your time and stay till the end of this video. Make sure that you follow some of the steps that I do, so that way you keep your results, so that way you have the best results possible. All right, so one of the most important things when you are actually sewing up a piece of clothing, like your shirt or pants or something like that, where people can actually potentially see the repair, you are going to want to work from the inside rather than from the outside. So what I mean by this is, if you see this hole here, we are right now on the outside. If I were to sew on the outside, you would see all of the nasty stitching and all of that other stuff, which would not really look so pleasant. Conversely, if we do it from the inside, all of the nasty, not so pretty sewing bits will be hidden on the inside where your skin is, and nobody's going to see that. They'll just see a very nice smooth line where you actually did your repair. So that is something to be aware of. So to accomplish this, all you're going to do is just take whatever article of clothing you're doing and turn it inside out. And it may be a little bit difficult to find your hole, but here we have it. All right, so this is what we're working with. And what we're going to do here is just simply take our thread, unwind it. You're going to want to take out a fair bit of thread Generally, I don't really measure this, but I just sort of unroll until I feel like I have a pretty decent amount. It's always easier if you have more thread and don't need it than if you have less thread and need to rethread the needle. Of course, that's a thing that you can do, but it's not the best, especially if you are really concentrating on your work and then you have to stop. All right, so then you want to choose a needle appropriate for your work. So there are a bunch of different types of needles in here. I tend to go for these smaller ones, so we'll go with that. And you just want to take one of those out. So here we go. And to thread the needle, what you're going to do is simply make sure that your string is perfectly straight, and then what I like to do is lick the end of the thread here, and by doing that, it'll keep all of the parts that you may have messed up by cutting it. It'll keep them all together, and it'll make it much easier to put through the needle. So here we go, now we have it through the needle. Just roll your finger over to the other side of the needle and pull. And now you'll see that we have our string through the needle. And then you'll just pull until the string is taut. And you want to make sure that you have an even amount of thread on either side of the needle. So just sort of pair up the two ends like such, and then just pull until the needle is right at the bottom. Then you'll just want to do a simple knot with these two pieces of thread. So just take them, roll them around your finger, and push through the hole, and then just pull that thread until you get a nice little knot. And then just repeat that a couple of times. You want to make a decent sized knot depending on what application you're doing. So if your hole is rather large, or the thread around the hole is not in the best condition, you may want to have a larger knot, so that way you don't run the risk of accidentally going through the thread and not actually making any real progress towards your repair. So we'll go one more, just make this a little bit larger. So just make sure that the knots line up so that way they build on each other rather than having a bunch of little knots in a row. You want to make sure that you build up one single knot. Once we have this knot in place, we can just cut off the excess. So take your little scissors here and remove the excess. So now we have that taken care of. Now we can get on to the fun part, which is actually initiating the repair and getting our article of clothing where it needs to be. So as I had mentioned before, I have done this method a number of times on various pieces of clothing, ranging in price from as little as like a couple of bucks all the way up to a couple of very expensive Burberry coats retailing for between $1,000 and $2,200. So like I said, I am pretty comfortable with this. You may not be, so go at your own pace. All right, so what you're going to see here is the hole. What I would recommend, if you have a piece like this that's still hanging on, move it to the outside where you are. And then what can be useful, depending on the size of your hole, is the clips that are included. So you'll have some of these clips. You may want to just sort of clip a little section that you're working on. However, in this particular case, it might, you know what, I think it'll work. So you see that we have this clipped off a little bit here. What you're going to want to do is start from one side of the problem area, and you'll want to get as close to the actual hole as you can while still maintaining a nice thread. So what you don't want to do is, if there's a lot of marring of the fabric near the hole, you don't want to go and grab a hold of that marred fabric, as it is going to be much weaker and it's not going to provide a solid anchor for your thread. But once you put your needle through, you want to pull all the way until you feel a little bit of resistance from that knot that we made at the beginning. Once you're there, you will be good to go. So then you just want to go very, very slightly to the left or to the right, depending on which direction your hole is facing. For me, it's facing to my right, so I'm going to go to the right. And you're just going to put your needle through again, pull, and as you'll see here, my thread is actually in between this hole here that's made by the thread that I'm pulling through now. This is a pretty good practice, as it's going to sort of semi-knot your thread as you're going through, which will make the bond overall much stronger. So just make sure that you keep an eye on your thread when you pull it through, as you want it to make full contact on either side of your repair area. You don't want to accidentally catch some of the thread on a ripped part or something like that, as it could cause an unwanted knot or make your repair a little bit inconsistent. So what we're going to do is just keep on going with this. So like I said, make sure that you are doing this at your own pace, and that you are keeping an eye on what you're doing, and that you don't go too fast, because it is very easy to get bored with this and want it to be done fast, and then that's where you'll make a mistake. So just take it nice and slow. So you'll see here, I'm just pulling through, keeping tension, making sure that this thread knots off where I want it to and not where I don't want it to. And again, try to keep your threads as close to each other as possible, so that way you get as much thread count on the actual repair area as you can. And again, keep it as close to the top as you can. This will make it so that way on the outside, there will be as little puckering as possible. And that means that it'll be a lot harder for anybody to tell that it was a repair job. It's just going to make your end product look much better. All right, so now we are nearing the end of our first section. And in this particular rips case, there's a little bit of a turn that's going to happen. So what we're going to do here is just work on making that turn. All right, so sorry for the weird cut there. This particular hole was actually caused by having a dried piece of a Tide Pod that sort of ended up causing a rip. So I needed to loosen it up first in order for me to actually proceed. So now just taking a look here, we can see the hole a little bit better now. And so what we're going to do is just, like I said, try to keep things as tight and as neat as we can. So we're going around this bend here, just going to put the needle in and try to keep it as close to the edge as possible. Unfortunately, sometimes, and a lot of times, these cuts will not be entirely smooth. They will be jagged, and so you will have to kind of go with it as best you can. Like I said, it can be a little bit challenging. Thread, a super nice repair for everything, because edges can get frayed. There could be other problems like that. So like I said, just do your best. Unfortunately, things like this do happen, but that is why I am making this video, so that way you can hopefully save a little bit of money, not have to go to a professional all the time. There are, of course, cases where a professional would be advantageous for you. When I had mentioned repairing some of those Burberry coats, I was mainly working on very small areas, particularly the buttons. And so in those cases, it wasn't really the end of the world. I was being extremely careful, making sure that thread didn't go where it wasn't supposed to and all of that stuff, but it wasn't like a visible repair that somebody would see just looking at it. So, like I said, gauge your comfortability and proceed accordingly. But in all of this, patience is the key. All right, and we are mostly at the end of this little row here. And we pretty much have this entire hole sealed up at this point. So now all that's left to do is finish up. All right, so I just removed that little clip there. So as you can see here, we have pretty much sealed this guy up. What I would recommend you guys to do is go over this a couple of times just to make sure that you keep everything nice and strong. That way it's not going to break again, because as I had mentioned before, these areas around breaks can be pretty fragile. The thread from the actual garment might not be as strong as it... The thread from the actual garment is not going to be as strong as it once was, so you will definitely want to reinforce your threads so that way they keep the garment together for a good long while. And the way that you do that is just simply going back the way that you came. And what you want to be extremely careful of here is making sure that when you do go back, that you don't make huge jumps. You want to be consistent as you were when you went through this originally. And you want to basically move in very small increments so that way you aren't accidentally tying lengths together that are too long and will cause bunching, because that is definitely something that you don't want to do. It's not aesthetically pleasing, and somebody will definitely tell that you made the repair much more easily than they would if you take your time and go in very small increments. So we're just going to give this a once over by going back the way that we came. Like I said, we're going to just double this up. You can go more than double if you like, but I typically see the most value if I just do a double pass. And another thing that you can do while you're going through this process is, so we're almost back at where we started with this repair. With this thread here, we will pretty much be just about done. All right, so now the last bit that I'm going to go over is pretty much finishing off our job. So as you can see here, we have just threaded through one more time. We're going to make the needle go through the hole again, pull all the way. What I like to do, as you've been seeing throughout this video, is to hold the thread hole open and then pull the thread through. That makes sure that we get a nice tight seal. And what you can do here is just go through some of the threads that you've made, some of the threads from the original garment, whatever works, and you just want to make a bunch of knots. So these guys right here, these are what are called knots, and Yeah, you just want to make sure that you're staying within a very small region because you don't want to, like I said, tie together bits that are too far apart, as it will bunch the fabric together and it'll look a little bit awkward from the outside. But I generally like to do about 4 or 5 knots just to be safe. And then what you can also do is, if you see here, we have some of the fabric that we have some of the thread that we've put in. You can just thread through the side of that and then put in some knots there. That will ensure that your thread is going to be integrated perfectly into the garment and it's not going to come out easily. So we'll just put in a couple of those knots. And again, this is why I had mentioned to you guys that you would want to turn your garment inside out before attempting this, as the thread buildup here can be quite substantial. And if this were on the outside, it would be pretty obvious that there was a repair done. All right, so with that being said, we have pretty much finished here. So all you're going to do is just stick your needle somewhere, get your trusty scissors, hold the thread taut, and then cut as close to the base of the thread as you can. There we go. We have just cut our thread. Now we can discard all of this stuff to the side. And this is our completed product here. So you can see that it's nice. You can tug at it a little bit. It's not going anywhere. Let's see how it looks from the outside. All right, and so this is the look from the outside. All right, so it looks like we may have missed a couple of bits here. It's not as tight as I would like it to be. However, it is a pretty decent go for a first pass. So as with any of this type of stuff, testing as you go is pretty crucial. Just make sure that you get it to where you want it, and then you will be completely done. So hopefully this was a helpful video for you guys. If you did enjoy it, please remember to drop a like down below. If you want to pick up any of these supplies or any other supplies, please use the links down in the description, as they are affiliate links and will help out the channel a little bit, and they cost nothing extra to you. So I will see you guys in the next video.